Okay, day 109, DynCorp Harvest. This is version 3. This is going to be about fusion centers. This is going to relate directly to Hillary Clinton. She is going to be doing a project called the Super Predator Project, and it's basically targeting groups in the United States and individuals in the United States that are political enemies, and also people who are willing to give a donation to target their enemies. It's going to start in 1993. You're going to find the Branch Davidians was a group that was actually there were members in that group that carried AK-47s and were actually a kill squad, a red team inside the Branch Davidians. And you're going to find that there was also a rat line to Oklahoma City for heart transplants way back then with the hearts of prisoners from the Arkansas state prison system. So I'm not going to talk too much more about that, but I'm going to just say in 1995, Hillary was the Central Intelligence Agency's representative in the West Wing of the White House to push forward the violent crime bill or the Super Predator crime bill. And it put in, I think, 67 different kinds of death penalties. And those death penalties were going to be supplying hearts. So I won't be able to go too much more into that. I'm just going to, in this episode, I just want to focus on the beginnings of the fusion centers and where they came from. So General Grange was a Green Beret Army intelligence officer in Vietnam, and Vietnam put fusion centers, basically torture centers and information centers, intelligence collection centers in every province of Vietnam. And the same pattern is being used for the United States. So this executive order was signed by Bill Clinton in 1998 after the violent crime bill put out 100,000 community policing officers. What you do with the community policing is you start off doing, neighborhood watch and nice PR things, but then you're developing your covert team at night. So this Presidential Decision Directive 62 specified that the CIA was supposed to help the FBI with counterterrorism or disruption activities. Okay, so this program of the CIA infiltrating the FBI was through the Counterterrorism Division, and they created something called the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Okay, the reason why they went with this program is because there was a huge CIA leak of how Nixon was targeting dissidents, and so was the FBI targeting dissidents through the anti-war years. The program never really stopped, it just changed names, but this is where it ramped up and said, hey, we could add basically what we've learned in the CIA to the FBI. The FBI's techniques up until that time were like sending Martin Luther King a letter and saying, we need you to commit suicide. Very kind of tepid, weak attempts. The CIA's psychological warfare program was far more effective. So that gave us fusion centers. And what we have is 50 state fusion centers all around the country, and then 25 regional fusion centers. They're really the 25 top cities in the United States. And this is the rollout of the Joint Terrorism Task Force plan. This is the same setup, as I mentioned, as the Phoenix program in Vietnam. And what it amounted to was assessing where our vulnerabilities were. So you go out to state and local government, then you go out to the private sector and you look at all the power plants and the water filtration plants and the electrical grid and all those types of things. And you actually give these people training courses. This is called InfraGuard, like for infrastructure, to guard the infrastructure. And you almost, by going through these courses, teach them to be intelligence gatherers for you. So all the people at the power company, the gas company, the water company, the city employees, all are giving you information. Plus they have other groups for private citizens who want to be basically intelligence collectors, operatives, whatever you want to call them. So all that information comes into the State Fusion Center. You have other groups doing the threat assessment. So these are the federal government's doing the threat assessment, state and local law enforcement. And then you have all these groups feeding information into the Fusion Center. Now this is what the Fusion Center puts out. But actually, if you look at like the Oracle map. This is the Oracle map for Obamacare. And it's all these agencies, IRS and all these things, state and local. This is the way that this information as well goes into your Fusion Center, and it all goes into your dossier. So here you are as consumers. This is the way a Fusion Center, because it's a public-private partnership again, you have half of the Fortune 500 companies giving money to the Fusion Centers, donating money. And for that, they get to target who they want. And they also get to choose their winners. So we're going to put those people on a winner's list or a loser's list, depending on where our contributions are coming from. This is how Hillary is using it to gain contributions. If anybody gives you trouble, if an employee gives you trouble, we'll get them. If they want to have a heart surgery, we'll know about it. We'll put them on the end of the list. If they if they have IRS trouble, we'll put them on the list. So this is the way of this exact program was used in Germany. It's been used in the United States for a long time, and it was used in Vietnam as well. I'm talking about things not just killing people and torturing them, but killing their water buffalo, even if they suspected that they were a part of the resistance against the Vietnam regime. So it gets down to even very small disruptions like that. United States as well. So the Chicago Fusion Center, they don't want to publish the locations of these, but this is a long time ago. This is 8 years ago. They've got a lot more screens than that now. I was involved all the way to the beginning when Rudy Giuliani did a Fusion Center in Times Square 2002. So I lived right across the street. I was very familiar with the New York setup right after 9/11. So most people think of the Fusion Center as this Snowden stuff where all of your text and phone number, or all of your text and email and Skype sessions and your YouTubes like this one, all that goes into the dossier as well. And then there's this search engine called Prism that you can use. And this is where Steve Jobs was kind of resisting Google's effort to get all this information. But this is just the beginning of the information that's in your dossier. As I mentioned before, this Palantir software, and this used to be the Promise software, adds all kinds of information, as you can see in this graph, to your file at the Fusion Center. It's going to graph out your friends here and so forth. It's going to graph out everything that you've ever said, everything. You watching this channel, so you might want to drop away. And it's even using satellite data to locate people 7/24. You can put kind of this smart dust here on people's cars and houses, and you can mark them for certain things. So you can mark them red if you think they're target, and you can mark them blue if you think they're in between, and you can mark them green if you think they're a good guy. But then you can recruit these groups. Usually it's veterans groups and so forth, but that will go out, and this is Team Rubicon, but that will harass the people you think are the enemies all the time. So this is psychological operations. In the United States, the Joint Terrorism Task Force was implemented by DynCorp through the FBI, through the Counterterrorism Division of the FBI, and this is Andrew McCabe, who's the key guy who implemented it. David Petraeus wrote it from West Point, and you've had several other people roll it out. But some of the things they do are setting up these sex stings, and unfortunately they're using these girls, and they are working for asset forfeiture. So it's just basically an extortion ring. So the Fusion Centers are moving people toward entrapment schemes to try to get them on the asset forfeiture. So some of the things they try to do is break up marriages and try to get there to be a call, for instance, on domestic violence. Even if nothing happened in domestic violence, still want to arrest him, and then from then on, I can say he's a wife beater, he's a wife beater, he's a wife beater, he's a wife beater. Same thing with child porn. Same thing with underage sex and so forth. They like the cameras and so forth. So what is actually happening is, I'm saying right now, this Fusion Center is not located in Homan Square in Chicago, but I am saying this is one of the first torture centers. And what a torture center allows you to do is find out the other people that are involved in a ring, if you will, before you kill them. And I believe the Haitians are being brought here, to harvest their hearts now because it's just so valuable. Bodies are worth millions. And there's going to be, I believe, 25 of these around the United States, and they're going to correspond with the regional fusion centers, okay? And they're going to be mainly in the big cities. And there's a little bit of the super predator thing going on here. It's still targeting those people that they think are super predators as the main organ donors. But a lot of them also are going to be people like me, journalists. So it's the Project Phoenix program. If you want to read more, it's Doug Valentine wrote the book on it. Again, General Grange was the guy who implemented it in Vietnam, and his son is the one who's implementing it for the United States as far as the military side of it. And the guy who wrote it is this Dale Brickham, this Yale anthropologist, I'll call him. He was the author of the CIA Phoenix program, and he's quite a genius, maybe an evil genius, but he's quite the genius for how he used all parts of society to gradually degrade the targets. Other victims, Gary Webb, Michael Rupert. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be on Jeff Rentz's show. They pushed me out 2 weeks. I am going to be the fourth Wednesday every month. So he did a lot of work with Jeff Rentz, Michael Rupert, and he was almost killed in an incredible car accident. Jeff Rentz was. This is the kind of thing. You don't go out and just shoot somebody, in the middle of Fifth Avenue. You set up these car accidents, you cut the brake lines, little stuff, never big stuff. But if you ever see Jeff Rentz's car, you'll know that there was an attempt on his life. But again, you want to get that first arrest, for, he's a wife beater. And then you go to these groups, these religious groups, and you say, we're gonna get back at these wife beaters, And then there's a certain amount of revenge motive that's been placed in them to go get somebody, okay? And all agencies are used. The ATF is going to be used. The United States Secret Service has these prowler teams. You're going to use all the agencies of the federal government, state government, and local government to go after your targets, as well as private sector. And what I also want to say is that the trend is going the wrong direction. This is Top Secret America, written by Dana Post in 2010, and she had at that time about 1,900 federal locations around the country for anti-terrorism. Anti-terrorism is the cover for this kind of attack on individuals in the U.S. But the outside agencies was only around 2,000 at that time. Now these are kind of the disruption groups have risen to over almost 7,000. Now they're not all going to be disruption groups, but this is the black budget. This is where the black budget, this is why the $6.5 trillion, we can't locate it. It's the counterintelligence part of the budget. And these political military officers that work overseas, these people are called DHS liaison officers here in the United States. So you're going to, for that sheriff that I mentioned earlier today, you're going to see that there's a Homeland Security liaison officer for that county. So, and go back one version if you want to see that episode about the sheriff, and this is how DynCorp affects the sheriffs. And that's it for Fusion Centers. Thanks.